Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one single, powerful moment from our source material, and it's an act that pretty much flips everything we think we know about power and leadership right on its head. So, let's jump in. So, let's just start with a big question. What does true power really look like? The story we're getting into today forces us to rethink our whole idea of power, of leadership, of what it even means to be great. Honestly, it's a story that turns all of our assumptions completely upside down. Okay, so the scene is the Last Supper. And, our source paints a picture that's maybe not the calm, quiet meal we see in paintings. The room was actually super tense. The disciples, they were jealous, they were arguing, bickering over who was the greatest. And it's right in the middle of all this very raw human mess, that something absolutely incredible happens. This is where it gets wild. Right in the middle of all that ego and drama, Jesus does something that was just unthinkable for a leader, for a teacher, for anyone in his position. I mean, it sent a total shockwave through that room. To really get this, you have to picture the scene. The roads back then were just dirt and grime. So when you showed up at someone's house, your feet were disgusting. It was the job of the lowest servant, literally the slave of the house, to wash the guests' feet. But on this night, nope. Pride was running so high that not a single one of the disciples was willing to stoop that low. And this is where the contrast just becomes stunning. To really feel the weight of this moment, you have to understand what was going on in Jesus' mind right before he did this. And the source material is really, really clear on this. At that exact moment, Jesus was completely aware of his divine authority. He knew that the Father had put everything into his hands. We're talking the entire universe, nations, sickness, evil spirits, you name it. It was all under his control. He knew exactly who he was. So what do you do when you know you're the master of the universe? Well, Jesus gets up from the table, but not to give a speech or flex his power. No, he gets up and, as the source puts it, basically becomes a house slave to do the single most humiliating job in that room. But this incredible act of humility doesn't exactly get a round of applause. Instead, it just slams right into a brick wall of human pride. And that wall has a name: Simon Peter. You can just imagine the look on Peter's face. He's probably thinking, wait, what? He says, Lord, are you washing my feet? The source says this was just an impossible thought for him. The idea of his master, his teacher, kneeling down to wash his dirty feet, it just didn't compute. And that shock turns into outright refusal. He says, no way, you will never wash my feet. And listen, that's not Peter being humble. That's his pride talking. It's a pride that's so uncomfortable, so offended by the idea of being served in this backwards way. And this is a really key point in the source material. It's basically saying that pride, that mindset that says, I've got this, I don't need help, I'm self-sufficient, is completely at odds with the core message of Christianity. The two just can't coexist. So Jesus' response just raises the stakes sky high. He looks at Peter and says, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. Whoa. He's saying, Peter, this isn't about your comfort or my status. You have to let me serve you like this if you want to be connected to me. It's a powerful idea. The cure for pride is learning to accept his service. So now Jesus starts to unpack what this is all really about. And he makes it clear this isn't just about starting some new church ritual. The physical act of washing feet points to something much, much deeper. Yeah, the source puts it perfectly. He wasn't trying to create a feet-washing community. He was trying to create a humble, serving community. You see the difference? The action itself means nothing if it's not coming from a place of genuine humility on the inside. And this is where he explains this really important spiritual idea. He draws a line between two kinds of cleansing. First, there's being bathed. Think of that as a one-time, top-to-bottom cleansing. That's salvation. But then there's getting your feet washed, and that's something different. That's a daily thing. It's like this. You take a full bath in the morning. You're totally clean. But as you walk around all day, your feet are going to get dirty again, right? He's saying it's the same for a believer. Once you're bathed in salvation, you're clean. But as you walk through the world, you pick up dust, you get muddied by daily sin, and that's why you need to keep coming back to him to have your feet washed, to be cleansed from that daily stuff. Okay, so after explaining the whole spiritual side of things, Jesus makes a pivot. He shifts from what this act means for our relationship with Him to what it means for our relationship with each other. He holds it up as the new model for how His followers should live. And He is crystal clear about it. He says, I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you. There's no wiggle room there. He's saying, this thing I just did, this is the new standard. This isn't just a nice story, it's the actual blueprint for greatness in my kingdom.
I mean, this just blows up our whole definition of greatness, doesn't it? Everything the world tells us is important success, status, being served it all gets thrown out the window. In this new way of thinking, greatness isn't about having power over people, it's about humbling yourself to serve them.
The source even gives us a pretty simple way to remember this whole principle. It's the acronym JOY. It stands for Jesus first, others next, and yourself last. It's a really straightforward little guide for putting this servant mindset into practice. And really, this one verse that the source highlights just wraps it all up perfectly. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. There it is. The person with all the power in the universe chose to use it to serve, not to be served, all the way to the end. So what do we do with this? This ancient story leaves us with a really personal, really modern challenge. It forces us to look at our own lives, our jobs, our families, what we think of as making it, and ask a tough question. If greatness is really service, then how are we called to serve?